The soft hum of the afternoon heat blanketed the zoo, where crowds dwindled, and the animals retreated to shaded corners. Inside the lion's enclosure, Leo, the prideful king of the habitat, lounged lazily beneath the baobab tree, his golden mane glinting in the sun. Suddenly, a commotion erupted. A shrill screech broke the monotony, and a small figure hurtled into the enclosure. It was a young monkey, thrown by mischievous hands beyond the tall metal bars. The creature landed awkwardly, shaking off the shock as its wide, frightened eyes locked onto the lion's. Leo's ears perked up. His amber eyes, sharp and curious, followed the intruder's every move. Around him, the lionesses stirred, their muscles taut, their instincts whispering tales of prey. But Leo, wise and measured, remained still. The monkey darted to the farthest corner of the enclosure, trembling, scanning for an escape. No trees to climb, no vines to swing from, just the ever-present gaze of the lions. It seemed like the end for the little primate. But then, something unexpected happened. Leo rose, his powerful frame casting a shadow that seemed to stretch forever. He approached the trembling monkey, who cowered, expecting the worst. Yet, instead of pouncing, the lion stopped a mere paw length away and tilted his massive head, as if curious. The monkey, sensing no immediate threat, peeked up. A flicker of courage sparked within it. Slowly, it reached out, tiny hands brushing against Leo's nose. The lion huffed in response, a warm breath that made the monkey squeak but not run. The lionesses watched in disbelief, their instincts overridden by their leader's puzzling behavior. One by one, they approached, but none attacked. Instead, they formed a circle around the monkey, their interest piqued by this peculiar visitor. For hours, the zoo staff and visitors watched in awe as the monkey and the lion shared an uneasy, miraculous truce. When the keepers finally intervened, carefully coaxing the monkey back to safety, Leo gave a low rumble, almost like a farewell. From that day on, the lion seemed a little less fearsome, and the monkey, now returned to its troop, often gazed across the enclosures, as if remembering the unexpected kindness of a king who chose curiosity over hunger. Days passed, and life in the zoo returned to its usual rhythm, or so it seemed. Yet, something had changed in the lion enclosure. Leo found himself sitting by the edge of the habitat more often, his gaze fixed on the nearby trees where the monkey troop roamed. The memory of the tiny intruder lingered in his thoughts, a spark of curiosity unquenched. On the other side, the monkey, now affectionately called Chip by the zoo staff, had become somewhat of a legend among his troop. His tale of survival in the lion's den was retold with dramatic gestures and wild screeches, earning him a mix of awe and skepticism. But Chip's heart was restless. Against all instincts, he felt drawn back to the lion's enclosure. One early morning, when the zoo was still quiet, Chip ventured down from the trees, his little hands clutching pieces of fruit. With cautious leaps, he approached the lion's enclosure once again. This time, it was by choice. Leo noticed him immediately, his ears twitching in recognition. The lion rose slowly, his immense frame moving with a grace that belied his size. The two met at the barrier, where Chip nervously placed the fruit on the ground. Leo sniffed at the offering, then rumbled softly, a sound that Chip interpreted as acceptance. This peculiar interaction became a routine. Every morning, Chip brought fruit to Leo, and in return, Leo allowed Chip to sit near him, sometimes even playing gently with the monkey's tail. The lionesses watched from a distance, their amusement growing, though none dared interfere with Leo's newfound companion. The zookeepers were baffled. They debated whether to intervene, worried for Chip's safety, but the bond between the two animals seemed to defy all expectations. It wasn't just tolerance, it was trust. Over time, Chip even ventured inside the enclosure during feeding hours, confident that Leo's protective presence would keep him safe. The visitors loved the spectacle, dubbing the pair the king and the clown. Their unlikely friendship became the zoo's most popular attraction, sparking conversations about the nature of animals and the connections they could form. One fateful day, a storm rolled in. The skies darkened, and rain lashed against the zoo. In the chaos, a tree fell, damaging part of the lion enclosure's fencing. As the lions paced restlessly, the staff hurried to fix the breach, their nerves taut at the thought of an escape. Chip, who had sought refuge under a nearby awning, watched the scene unfold. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed. A piece of equipment had startled the lions, and one lioness bolted toward the gap in the fence. The other lions hesitated, but their instincts urged them to follow. Before anyone could react, Chip let out a piercing screech and raced into the enclosure. His unexpected cry froze the lions in their tracks. Even the escaping lioness paused, confused by the monkey's audacity. Chip leapt onto Leo's back and began chattering wildly, as if calling for order. Leo roared a deep, commanding sound that reverberated through the enclosure. The lioness stopped, her ears flattening in submission. One by one, the lions retreated, drawn back by their leader's authority. The zookeepers quickly sealed the gap, their hearts racing from the near disaster. As the storm subsided, Chip sat perched on Leo's back, his tiny chest puffed with pride. He had not only helped prevent a crisis but had cemented his place in the pride as an honorary member. From that day on, the bond between Leo and Chip grew even stronger. They were more than friends, they were a family born of trust, respect, and the courage to defy the natural order. As the seasons changed, so did life at the zoo. The bond between Chip and Leo became a daily highlight, but their shared adventures were far from over. One crisp autumn morning, the zookeepers decided to enrich the lion's habitat by adding new features: a cascading stream, higher rocks for climbing, and an interactive puzzle feeder that required problem-solving to unlock food. Curious as ever, Chip was the first to inspect the changes. The stream fascinated him, he leapt over it with childlike glee, occasionally splashing into the shallow waters. Leo observed his antics, bemused but patient. The other lions, more cautious, avoided the noisy monkey, but even they couldn't resist sneaking a glance at the energetic creature. The puzzle feeder, however, became a source of collective frustration. A complex contraption, it released chunks of meat only if the lions manipulated a series of levers correctly. Despite his regal intelligence, Leo struggled with the device, swatting at it with growing annoyance. Chip, ever resourceful, climbed onto Leo's head and studied the feeder. His nimble fingers began to explore the mechanism. Pull, twist, press, within minutes, the monkey had unlocked it. Out tumbled the prize, to the astonishment of the lions and the watching zookeepers. From that day on, Chip became Leo's unofficial advisor. Whenever a challenge arose, be it opening the puzzle feeder or navigating the new features of their habitat, the lions deferred to the clever monkey. The once lone primate had become an indispensable part of their pride. One moonlit evening, as the zoo prepared for its first ever overnight safari experience, something unusual occurred. A strange scent wafted into the lion enclosure, carried by the wind. Leo's nose twitched, and Chip, ever perceptive, noticed his friend's sudden tension. The scent came from the reptile house, which was under renovation. Unbeknownst to the staff, one of the snakes, a large and curious python, had slithered out through an improperly secured enclosure. The python, exploring its newfound freedom, made its way toward the lion habitat. Chip, always alert, spotted the shimmering, scaled intruder first. His screeches echoed through the enclosure, waking the other lions and catching the attention of the night staff. However, the python, unbothered by the noise, continued its steady approach. Leo stepped forward, his golden eyes gleaming in the moonlight, his growl low and warning. The python coiled, rising to match the lion's gaze. The two predators faced off, but before either could act, Chip intervened. Leaping down from a tree branch, the monkey grabbed a dangling rope tied to a nearby enrichment structure and swung toward the snake. With acrobatic precision, he landed near the python and began hurling small rocks at it. Startled, the python shifted its focus, giving the zookeepers enough time to secure it safely. Leo rumbled his approval, brushing his massive head against Chip as if to say, "Well done, little friend." The night staff couldn't stop talking about how Chip and Leo had averted what could have been a dangerous situation. One sunny afternoon, Chip overheard a group of parrots gossiping about a broken fence in the gazelle habitat. The rumors set his mind racing. What if the gazelles got loose? What if chaos erupted in the zoo? Chip, now accustomed to being the zoo's unofficial problem solver, decided to investigate. Convincing Leo to join was easy. Chip had a knack for persuasion. Together, the unlikely duo set off on a covert operation. While the other lions rested, Leo allowed Chip to climb onto his back, and they patrolled the perimeter of their enclosure. As they reached the far corner, Chip pointed excitedly toward the gazelle habitat. Sure enough, a section of the fence was precariously bent, and a few curious gazelles were edging closer to freedom. Thinking quickly, Chip scrambled out of the lion habitat and onto the fence, his chattering drawing the gazelles' attention. He performed a series of flips and silly gestures, distracting the animals long enough for the zookeepers to repair the damage. Meanwhile, Leo roared loudly, ensuring no other animals in the area dared venture near. Once the fence was secure, Chip returned to the lion enclosure, where Leo greeted him with a playful nudge. The gazelles were safe, the zookeepers were relieved, and Chip's reputation as the zoo's hero continued to grow. Chip's bond with Leo was unshakable, or so it seemed. But even in the closest families, tension can brew. One cold winter morning, as frost painted the zoo in silver, a new lion was introduced to the enclosure. His name was Kovu, a young male with an unkempt mane and a rebellious gleam in his eyes. Kovu immediately challenged Leo's authority, growling and pacing aggressively. Leo stood firm, exuding dominance, but Chip sensed the tension in the air. For the first time in their friendship, Leo's attention was elsewhere, his focus locked on asserting control over this newcomer. Chip tried to defuse the situation in his usual way by performing antics and drawing laughter from the pride. But Kovu wasn't amused. He sneered at the little monkey and even took a swipe at him, sending Chip scurrying to safety. Over the next few days, Kovu's influence grew. He was cunning, planting seeds of doubt among the lionesses about Leo's ability to lead. Chip, feeling ignored and unsure how to help, began to withdraw. The pride felt divided, and the once unified enclosure seemed colder. One fateful evening, Kovu made his move. As the keepers delivered the lion's meal, he lunged at Leo, claws outstretched. The pride erupted in chaos, with lionesses scattering and Chip watching in horror from atop a tree. For a moment, it seemed Kovu might overpower Leo. But then Chip did the unthinkable. He grabbed a heavy branch from the tree, swung down, and slammed it against Kovu's back. The young lion yelped in surprise, momentarily stunned. Leo seized the opportunity to pin Kovu down, roaring with such authority that the other lions bowed their heads. Kovu growled in defeat but didn't dare challenge Leo again. Afterward, the pride slowly regrouped, but something had changed. Chip, though triumphant, noticed the lionesses glancing at him with a mix of respect and unease. Was he truly one of them, or was he still an outsider meddling in lion affairs? Chip's loyalty was soon put to the ultimate test. One night, a spark from a faulty electrical wire ignited a fire in the birdhouse, and strong winds carried the flames toward the lion enclosure. Alarms blared as the zoo staff scrambled to evacuate the animals. Inside the lion habitat, panic erupted. The lions roared, pacing nervously as smoke billowed around them. Chip, ever the quick thinker, sprang into action. He climbed the highest tree and used his vantage point to spot a safe path away from the flames. He screeched and gestured wildly, catching Leo's attention. The mighty lion roared to gather the pride, following Chip's lead through the enclosure. Together, they guided the lionesses and cubs to a safe corner, away from the spreading fire. But just as they reached safety, a burning branch fell, trapping a young lion cub behind a wall of flames. Without hesitation, Chip darted back into the danger zone. The flames licked at his fur, and the heat was unbearable, but Chip managed to reach the cub. He lifted it onto his back and climbed over the fiery barrier, just as the zookeepers arrived with hoses and extinguishers. When the fire was finally extinguished, the zoo staff found Chip and the cub huddled together, singed but alive. The pride surrounded them, with Leo standing protectively over his small friend.